Just because somebody's nice to you doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart.
Howdy doodle 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 do. Howdy doodle 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 do.
Howdy everybody. In a previous video I mentioned that we had made a lot of mistakes as we entered into this life, this farming and homesteading life. One of the biggest mistakes we made was buying property, and I wanted to talk about that today. And I'm going to talk about it in the context of autism because that had a pretty big effect on a lot of the decisions that were made. So I mentioned in a previous video that this is the third property that we've owned in Nicaragua. This is not the one that we started out with. The one that we started out with was about twice the size of this one. It was in a different part of Matagalpa, the same area, but a different part. Let me pause there for just a minute and tell you a little bit about the difference between autism and neurotypical people. Neurotypical people are people like you. And neurotypicals, as they're developing, as you're growing as a child, develop filters that allow you to filter out noise, and autistics lack those filters. We don't have those filters, or they're not well developed. Okay, for example, too much information comes in. Way too much information comes in many times. And that's why you wind up with seeing autistic kids in particular having meltdowns, what I like to call panic attacks. But it has to do with too much information coming in and not being able to filter that out and focus on one thing. It's just that everything is like the same volume. And so that's one thing. And that affects us not just in sound, not just in visual things, but it does with sound and visual things, but also with tactile. Certain fabrics cause a lot of discomfort in us, and other stuff. So we can't ignore that. If for example, Lena can't wear certain fabrics, and if she does, she can't filter out that feeling of discomfort the way that other people can, and just kind of ignore it. The second type of filter that autistics lack is an ability to interpret, identify and interpret nonverbal cues. So for example, we don't read body language well at all. We don't know what it means. We may see it, but we don't understand what it means. A third kind of relates to that, and that's that we can't tell when someone is not being truthful with us. We come to every conversation assuming that everybody's going to be telling us the truth. And so the idea that somebody might be lying to us isn't even on our radar screen. And as a result, not so pleasant things can happen. And then finally, the fourth is that we tend to take things very literally, and don't always understand the subtleties of things that people are saying. We tend to take them very literally. Like Lena sometimes says, you have to do something for me, and I say, right now? And she says, no, not now. But that's my literal interpretation of it, that I think when she says I have to do something, I have to do it right now. So those four things put together place autistics at a disadvantage in interacting with neurotypical people, particularly unsavory types. Now, in every culture, there are unsavory people. That's just a thing, an aspect of life. In Nicaragua is no different. We have unsavory people here too, but we have very nice people here, and our experiences here have been overall positive. But when it came to buying land, they weren't very positive. Now, one of the reasons why is that the unsavory people could see us coming a mile away. We're very gullible, we're very easily manipulated, and we tend to kind of think that because somebody's being nice to us, that they also have to be being honest with us. And that isn't always true. Just because somebody's nice to you doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. And that's a very difficult lesson that we've had to learn. So we were taken advantage of. But at the same time, we came to the process with a whole bunch of assumptions, of ill-conceived assumptions that also influenced that process. So I want to be fair. It wasn't that we were just these innocent, gullible people that got taken advantage of by unsavory people. That did happen, but we also came with a series of assumptions that made things orders of magnitude worse. The first of these assumptions was that we could manage the property at a distance. Now that may work some other places, but it definitely does not work here in Nicaragua. You have to be on the property. You have to be living on the property. And if you're not living there, you have to have somebody else that you trust living on the property. Somebody has to be there. If not, you might wind up with some squatters moving in, and next thing you know, you have to go through a legal hassle to get them off the property. So you cannot manage at a distance here, at least here in Nicaragua. That was a big assumption. I was still in Puerto Rico when we bought our first property, and that led to all kinds of problems. The second assumption was that we would be able to hire talented, qualified people to do a lot of, at least some of the work for us. In the rural area, which we call the campo in Spanish, in the campo, there's a lot of people that claim to be experts, but they don't have any expertise. And so if you go out and you say, do you know anything about plumbing? You ask 10 people will tell you yes. They'll expect you to buy all their tools for them so they can come and do the job for you. That should set up a red flag right off the bat. A plumber that doesn't have his own tools is kind of a big problem. So you have to be astute, and we were not particularly astute in that regard. We thought we could hire people. The people that we did hire turned out not to be reliable, turned out not to be trustworthy. We had one guy on the first property that insisted on using glyphosate, and we didn't want any pesticides, any herbicides being used on the property at all. The minute we turned our back, he was out there applying glyphosate. The third major thing was that we assumed that our gender would not be an issue, and it turned out to be an enormous issue. Nicaragua is a great place to live, don't get me wrong, but no place is perfect. Let's put it that way. No place is perfect. And one of Nicaragua's drawbacks is that it's a fairly machista culture. So it's a male-dominated, patriarchal type of culture. Men simply don't like to take direction from women. They don't feel comfortable with it. They don't want to do it. They don't feel that we know what we're talking about, or that we know what we're doing, and so they just kind of reject that outright. And so you give somebody a job to do, you explain it to them, and you ask them if they understand. They say, yes, I understand. They walk away and they do it the way they want to do it anyway. So we didn't think that our gender would be an issue. It turned out to be a major issue in dealing with employees. And then finally, bringing all of those things together, the fact that we attracted a lot of unsavory people in the process, we didn't know how to interpret what they were saying to us and doing, were taken advantage of multiple times. We came with a set of assumptions that turned out to be untrue. They weren't true at all. And then on top of that, the third major thing was desperation. Desperation. In particular, I was desperate. Buying land when you're desperate is the absolute worst time to buy it. Okay. I wanted to get started. I wanted to get going. And so I was desperate. And I mentioned in the introductory video that autistics, we have a lot of obsessions. We have a lot of things that we obsess about. And I was obsessing about the fact that I wasn't getting started, that I was wasting time, that the time was ticking away. And as long as the time kept ticking away, the likelihood that I would actually get into the farming would go lower and lower and lower, and pretty soon we just wouldn't do it at all. And that was my fear. And so we wound up, I think, if I want to be honest, I think that we bought land probably between 1 and 2 years before we were actually ready to own land. Buddy is pulling me here. Hey, buddy. We weren't ready to actually own land. We hadn't thought about, we'd thought about buying the land, and we thought about kind of what the features we wanted on the land and all of that, but we hadn't really thought about what we were going to do to manage the land afterwards. And that may be the biggest fault that a lot of other people make. You don't think through everything. You think through some things, but you don't think about what you're going to do after you have the land. You just kind of think that's going to take care of itself. Well, I've got news for you. It's not going to take care of itself, and it's going to get out of control very quickly. So the best thing you can do is to both make a plan about where you want to live, the kind of land you want to buy, all of that. That's fine. How much you're willing to spend, all of that. But then you need to make a plan for what you're going to do after you actually have the land. What is your first month going to look like? What is your first 6 months going to look like? What are you going to do? Now, I realize that in some cases you say, well, I can't really say that until I know what the land's going to look like. That's a point, but you could still have an idea of what your steps are going to be. So that's my big advice. If this video or any of the videos that we're making are valuable to you, please click the like button so that other people like you can find out about this video and learn too. And if you like me and you like watching these videos, please consider subscribing, and you'll know when I put new videos out. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. And I want to end by saying one little thing. We're living in wartime. It seems like we're always living in wartime. Please be a voice for peace. In your own family, in your own life, in your community, be in your country, be a voice for peace. Okay, thanks.